that's how you change and that's how you grow. In the beginning, looking back in my earlier years, I had so many opportunities because, we do have free will in this universe. So the universe can put anything out there for you, but it's free will, your own decisions. And that's universal law that you are allowed to make whatever move you so choose.
Right.
And so it's your ability to recognize this little push from the universe and where they're telling you to go or making things easier. It's totally up to you whether you choose the easy way or, some of us, including myself, tended to take the hard road most of the time.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Breakthroughs with Jordan Murphy, conversations about the defining moments that shape our lives. I have a great guest today, and, we started this interview actually before, and I had a technical issue, so we got to start all over again. But hey, you know what? That's the fun of doing a podcast, because anything can happen. Before we jump into the podcast anymore, a little bit of housekeeping on my end, just a request for, support on any way that you see fit. If you are enjoying this podcast, if you've been listening to this podcast on a regular basis and enjoying what you're hearing, share it. Let your friends know. Let your family know. This is a grassroots operation, people. So any support is greatly appreciated. It's the only way people are going to really hear about it, because I don't have a big ad campaign or anything like that. However, I do have some support for the podcast in the form of Audible.com, Amazon Fresh. I'm not making millions off of it, but however, I offer you guys just a little bit of a little love. Just go to the website, breakthroughswithjordanmurphy.com. And for a limited time, in fact, these two offers will expire probably the end of this year. I will be putting some new offers on the website. But bottom line, you get $25 towards your first purchase on Amazon Fresh. Those groceries get ordered online, get delivered to your front door. Super easy, super convenient. Same thing as far as audible.com is concerned. Click that link on my website, and you're going to get 2 free downloads with your first purchase on audible.com. And again, as I've said on the last couple episodes, I know that everybody has a great story. Everybody has a great breakthrough experience in their lives. And if you'd like to share it, yours, with me, just go to breakthroughswithjordanmurphy.com, go to the contact tab there, and shoot me an email, just an abbreviated version of your story. I'll give it a look, and perhaps you'll have an opportunity to be on the show, and I'll do an interview with you. So, let's get on with the show. I have a guest today. Her name is Dr. Claudy-Ann Keasberry, and she is one of only 450 U.S. practitioners who practice nutrition response testing at the advanced level. She graduated Summa Cum Laude with a Doctor of Chiropractic degree in 2000 from the University of Bridgeport. Keasberry is a certified Reiki practitioner. Now, we're going to drill down on all of this because she uses her knowledge of nutrition and chiropractics to successfully treat her patients. I just happen to be one of them. And you know what? There's a lot of just kind of surrender and faith that comes along with this type of practice. I think any practice of medicine, to be quite honest. So, Dr. Keasberry, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right. So we're going to talk about a bunch of things today, obviously, namely, obviously, one of your breakthroughs of many, I'm sure. But let's start with, now you're originally from Amsterdam.
Yes.
Okay. And then you made your way to Canada.
Yep. As a 5-year-old.
As a 5-year-old.
Canada. Yep.
Great. Parents together, still together, around?
They are. They've been together the whole time. They still are together. We immigrated as a family, and I had one additional sister once we were in Canada. Isn't
that extraordinary? I mean, I think it's easy to take for granted. My parents were together until my father passed away about 5 years ago. But it's something I think that is easy to take for granted, to have both parents still together.
Oh, sure. It all depends on what you're used to, I think. Kids nowadays have a completely different perspective of people of my generation. For me, it was normal to have your parents stay together through thick and thin.
Right. And, I think my mom has that same sensibility. Like, you know what? You made a contract when you stood at that altar, thick and thin, good times and bad, sickness, health, the whole 9 yards, even if you're pissed off at the guy. I mean,
right.
she stuck it out. So tell us a little bit about your practice, what you do, how it works, response testing, nutrition response testing, kinesiology, all that. So people who are listening can have some sort of an idea, Reiki, all of that. How do you use all of your skills to do what you do?
Well, it's difficult to describe exactly what goes on in my office. And, honestly, I don't even know what's going to happen day to day. That's kind of the type of practice it's become.
Right.
But originally I started as a chiropractor, obviously.
Right.
And after a couple of years of adjusting people, and I truly believe it's an amazing thing to do, and you can really help people. But in this day and age, with the quality of the food we're eating and the other types of stress that we encounter, just adjusting people wasn't doing it for me. I was getting kind of bored, to be honest. It was every day, and trying not to get people to come back too often. Next thing you know, my best friend in college, Corey, she says, "Oh, I've discovered this new thing. I want you to check it out." And maybe that's not exactly how it went down. But anyway, I did check it out. And that was my first epiphany of many, I have to tell you, since we are talking about breakthroughs.
Yeah.
But the day I learned what muscle testing was, which is technically known as applied kinesiology, my world just started to open up. I mean, I am definitely nothing like the person I was as far as in 8 years ago, 2010, when I moved out to California.
Let's go back a little bit, and we'll come back to this marker here. But let's go back a little bit. So you're in Canada. You're growing up in Canada, and I remember you told me this a couple times in our visits, but that you have a unique background as a jockey. So, not many folks run into jockeys these days,
True.
if at all.
True.
How does a female or anyone get into being a jockey?
Yeah, especially since, if you really know my background, I'm just an athlete and an animal lover. So the combination of those two things, I guess over the years, drove me to find something to do with animals that was athletic. And so I rode, perhaps, we didn't have a ton of money growing up. So I was able to ride an hour at a time, 2, maybe 3 times a year, because I did just love riding horses. That was innate in me. Mm-hmm. And finally, at about junior year of high school, I met someone who was a jockey, a female, as a matter of fact. And I took that opportunity to go visit her in Florida, and that brought me to the racetrack. And before you know it, I was walking the horses after they would exercise, and knowing that I wanted to come back as my summer job after that. And then I pretended I knew how to ride, because in my mind I kind of did know, but not anything like what I would come, in the future.
Confidence is part of the recipe, though, right?
Yes, misplaced confidence, as it may be, it works right. for me.
Right.
And the next thing you know, I was hopping up on those horses around it's called the shed row, the walkway around the barn. And then before you know, I was getting out on the track. And next thing you know, that people are asking me, "Oh, when are you going to start riding races?" And it hadn't even occurred to me, because I was probably 125 pounds at the time. Mm-hmm. And you had to be about 100 pounds to start riding.
Wow.
So that tenacious little self said, "I can do it." And before you know it, I was down to 100 pounds.
Wow.
And, I was a skinny 125. You know me, how I look, Jordan. I'm probably 125 now, and I'm definitely 5'5", pretty average stature, I guess. Even some would say thin.
Yeah.
So, to get down to 100, I did some crazy, crazy stuff. We could talk an hour about the stuff I did.
to lose 25 pounds? To lose 25 pounds, you mean?
Yeah, for an entire year, just to give you little tidbits.
Yeah.
I rasped cucumber, which is a very typical Dutch thing to do with meals. I rasped the cucumber and drenched it in lemon juice. And at that time, not knowing what I know about sweeteners, I would have Equal in that thing. And the bowl would sit in my fridge, and that's what I would eat every day. I would finish off a bowl. And
you would eat cucumber drenched in lemon juice and Equal.
Yeah.
That was your diet.
That was my diet, just a little bit Equal. And at the same, because I knew inherently it wasn't great for me, but I couldn't take the pure sourness of the lemon. And I thought it was going to melt my teeth away, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And then I would sit in the Florida sunshine in my car with the windows rolled up in a rubber suit.
Oh my God.
Hoping to sweat up some weight. Yeah.
Just melt away?
Melt away, basically. Yeah. Pretty crazy stuff.
How did you not become just a cranky, angry person who was 100 pounds? How did you not?
I have no idea. I'm going to give some kudos to my folks. Very upbeat. Both of them just taught me to be this compassionate, generous person. And, I was thinking about that this morning. I'm like, wow, my parents, they must be something else, because myself and my two sisters were just, I don't know, just loving, caring girls. That's what we are. And
are you the oldest? Where are you in the lineup?
I'm the oldest. I am the oldest.
You're the oldest.
In fact, my mother comes from a family of 10.
Whoa.
And there's about 25 first cousins with a whole ton of second cousins, and I'm the oldest of everybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm an oldest of 3 guys, and and my mom is not from 10, but she's from 6. So yeah, I mean, family is, again, like you said, it's what you're raised with. That's where your context is for family and marriage and all that modeling that goes on around us about what's common or normal, because what you and I experienced is not necessarily normal for everybody.
That's right. Right. And I just feel so fortunate, because when I see what's going on now and I hear my friends tell their stories. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I had such a good upbringing. I can't even tell you. Sure. I just feel like the luckiest gal in the world. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. I think that it's easy for humans to, no matter how good you got it, it's easy to poke holes in anything. Right. But when you compare, which is what we also do as humans, when we compare, it's also an exercise, I hope, in finding gratitude for what we have. And I also believe that it's such an easy pitfall for most of us, and I'm guilty of it in my past for doing the same thing, is using our past, using our family as excuses for not being successful, being fulfilled, finding love, all of it, because it's something that we just do because it's easy. Well, I'll blame my dad, or I'll blame my mom, or I'll blame that they got divorced, or I'll blame that we didn't have enough money, or I'll blame, all this stuff that just kind of takes the onus off ourselves.
That's right. It's called the blame game.
Yeah. And it's useless and however, I think many people either just get used to it. They've never had anybody say, "Hey, by the way, you should consider knocking that off."
Yeah.
Or they don't, or they know they should knock it off, but they don't have the will to do it. There is something to be said about will, like you said.
That's right. Yes. There's a lot to be said about will. And, I speak with my patients about that a lot, because I'm not there to criticize. I'm only there to help. And, you as a patient, I hope you can feel that that's all I'm about. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, I bring up that blame thing because I'm hearing excuse after excuse after excuse. And a lot of people just can't take that responsibility, and I'm not sure if it's just the way the world is today, why that's coming up so often. But it's definitely a point of, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's something to really look at when you're looking at healing yourself or bettering yourself. It's like, let's get that blame word out of there, because you're ultimately responsible for your behavior, your actions, and your everything.
I think that's the word that I would recommend to anybody, first of all, is responsibility. I think that if we, to start down a path of growth and expansion, is to take 100% responsibility. 100% responsibility, not a little bit of responsibility, not some of the responsibility. And I mean that in your body, in your health, in your wellness, in your relationships, in your finances, in your career, all of it. All of it.
That's right.
100% responsibility, because it takes two to tango no matter what. You can get into a conversation about a relationship with a husband and wife, or a wife and a wife, or a girlfriend and a boyfriend, whatever in that regard. And they can argue all day long, and they can make you believe that that other one is a nightmare. But it's like, you know what? How are you? Who are you? Who are you in this conversation? You're there, you're participating, and it takes two to tango. Have you taken a look at that? So I think that being able to have the humility, I think, also to own that you don't have it all figured out and you're not always right.
That's right. That's right. It comes with maturity as well. And you'll probably hear me say this several times today.
Yeah.
But just over time, you'd like to think you get wiser.
You'd like to think, yes.
You'd like to think, yes. So, something to work on. It's like, to me, life is, the entire time I've been on this earth, it's just been one learning experience after another. And it's up to you whether you take those learning experiences and do something good with them, or whether you just kind of take it for granted and say, oh, well, that's just what happened to me, and then here I go. And that's the difference in people. Yeah. Some people are able to do that, and some people are never able to do that.
Yeah, and I guess there's the rub. You wonder why or what has people say, all right, whatever, I'm going to go back and watch the Kardashians. There is something to be said. And I just rewind it for a second here. We said, as far as us hoping that we will experience wisdom over time, like we have enough experiences. Yes. You make enough mistakes, you fall on your face enough times, you get up enough times. I think over time, you hope to cultivate some wisdom. And, anytime I do this podcast and, my guests and I start pontificating about what we think works or doesn't work or things like that, it's not coming from a place like I know it all or we know it all. It's coming from the place, I think, of what we're saying here is we've been around the block a few times. We've made some mistakes. We've made some choices, and we've taken some actions aligned with those choices that's given us some evidence that says, you know what? This actually works. Now, it's not to say it's going to work for you, but it says, try it. Maybe it'll work for you. And I remember I did a seminar many, many years ago, and it was one of the things I loved hearing. I was probably 30. And I was open to the conversation, but I remember it was just saying, you know what? Try this on. Try on what we're sharing with you. And if you don't like it, you can go right back to being who you were before, That's right. That's right. Just give it a shot and see what happens. Because if what you're doing isn't working or isn't working as well as you'd like it to, you're looking for a choice. You're looking for something new. But if you don't take what you're given or what you hear as inspiration and put it into action, that's all it is. It's fleeting. It's fleeting.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. And, and it kind of brings me to the subject of what life path you are meant to be on. Mm-hmm. And, as we know, everyone has their own path. It's one of my favorite sayings, because I do get people that come in. I know I can help them, but there's something in there that just doesn't resonate. Yeah, it just, there's something in there that's stopping them from letting themselves jump on the bandwagon, get healthy, do whatever. And then I used to upset me tremendously. And I used to, walk out of the room and go, wow, I just failed on that one. Why aren't they getting that they need this help and that it's going to work? And that was in the beginning, of course, because now time's gone by, older, wiser, say what you will.
Right.
Now I know everyone has their own path. And if they choose not to follow my program or not to believe what I'm telling them, well, then so be it. It's not meant that they believe it at this time,
right,
or it's not meant for them to get better at this time. And, for a healer, it's a very hard thing to kind of give into that. But thankfully, I've been able to. The past couple of years, it's been actually very easy, because I do realize that everyone is on their own path, and that's all there is to it.
Now, I'm not trying to figure out how to ask the question. So let's get back to just the muscle testing. So
okay.
With muscle testing, for example, before I even came to you, I understood the concept of muscle testing. So for example, anybody who might be listening, if you were to take an orange and hold the orange in your right hand, and then put your left arm out like you're standing up, right? And you put your left arm straight out, and you put your orange and you hold it to your heart, and then somebody pushes your left arm down. The likelihood, in theory, is that your arm is going to stay more rigid. It's going to stay stronger,
right?
Because you have that healthy piece of fruit held to your body, connected to you. Okay. The other side is, now you pick up a pack of cigarettes, you put that to your chest. The likelihood is, in theory, that your arm is going to go down because it doesn't have strength whatever it is. But that's essentially muscle testing. Yes, no, maybe.
Well, that's putting it super simplistic. But the way I kind of teach people what it is, and I don't even know if I'm right. I just know this is an effective way to teach it.
Got it.
And that is that it's the person who's doing the muscle testing is communicating with your brain, regardless of whether you, the physical body, is agreeing with what I'm saying or not, or the tester.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in other words, it's kind of really scientific in the way that if something is a threat to the body, the only threat when you're pushing the arm down is you, the tester, stranger to the person being tested, pushing down on the arm, and your brain considers that a threat because it's a physical threat, right? Somebody's pushing on your arm. Hey,
right.
What are they doing? Right. That's not normal.
Right.
So that's the threat. So then the body's all about survival. So if there's another threat that comes along to the survival, it's going to prioritize. Your brain's prioritizing. So when let's say you go to the area of the liver, and if your liver's fine and there is no threat by you touching it, then that arm is going to stay the priority, and the brain is still going to think that you pushing on that arm is the biggest threat that's going on right now. However,
so the physical trumps whatever may or may not be going wrong with the liver. So if the liver isn't in jeopardy, the arm stays strong.
Right. Or if you're holding cigarettes and they're not going to harm you, then the arm is going to remain as the biggest threat. Interesting. Right. So then now you take we'll stick with your example. I'm sorry, I changed to liver, but we'll stick with your example.
That's okay.
The orange. Orange is not a threat. So the arm stays strong, and you can interpret it as, okay, the orange is good for me, or the orange doesn't hurt me. The arm is the biggest threat. Me pushing on that arm is still the biggest threat.
Okay.
So then you take that pack of cigarettes. Everyone knows it harms you, even though I could have a person who, for some weird reason, cigarettes don't harm them. Very improbable, however, just for, example's sake. Mm-hmm. You put the cigarettes on there, the arm goes down because now the brain is like, oh my goodness, what are those? And that's a threat to me more so than you pushing on the arm.
Got it.
You follow?
Yes. So I want to go a little bit deeper though, because now obviously someone like, I am not trained the way you are trained. I could, ask my daughter to put her arm out, and I could put an orange, you know what I mean? I could push her arm down. So I'm not trained, but there would still be an experience that would happen. However, someone like you who is trained, and I've worked with you obviously as a patient, and you're doing the muscle testing with my arm, and obviously we do it a little bit differently, but nonetheless, you're getting, like you said, some sort of connection, communication that's I would dare to say tough to measure, tough to measure, tough to explain, perhaps. But can you?
Well, it's tough to explain.
I mean, because
when I started doing this, I was doing it very by the book that they taught us at the school I went to. ULAN Nutritional Systems, they do very well at teaching you muscle testing and the logistics of it. And what started happening as I was doing this muscle testing umpteen million times a day with all different patients, I started feeling the answer before I would even push the arm. That was a breakthrough moment for me when that started happening.
Yeah.
In fact, in the old days, you wouldn't even know this because I haven't done it in so long. Since you've become a patient, I don't do this any longer. But we used to put the pills in the person's hand, the vitamins,
right,
and count them with the muscle testing to see how many they would need per day.
Right.
And so what would happen was I would do this, and before I would even start counting or even really get the pills, the intention was only there. This is what happened to me first, and it started freaking me out. I would see the number that they were going to need in my vision, in my visual field, before I would even do anything. So, so I would see the number 2 flash up, and then I'd be like, what the heck was that? And then I would start doing the muscle testing part of it, counting, and it would be 2. And then I would see a 4, and it would be 4, and so on and so on. So this started happening, and I was like, okay, this is crazy, but I'm just going to test it and keep testing it. And every single time it was exactly the same. So
you were doing your old way of doing it along with your new experience of it, just to kind of see like, oh, okay, 4, no, she, not 2, not 3, 4. Okay. So that's how you're saying you tested it initially.
That's right.
Right.
I would just start seeing it. Then that changed to feeling. That was the next progression. I'd be like, wow, I know this is going to be 2. I don't even have to test. And I would test the double check, and boy, there we went. And that was the beginning of the quote unquote new way I do things now. It's gotten a lot more advanced than counting numbers ahead of time.
Right.
But and it was a combination of the various patients I was getting, and they were teaching me by their encounters. And, it was just like one huge lesson over the last, I guess it would be 7 years.
Okay.
And it's just been one advancement after the next, and almost surreal at this point how quickly things are going, because now I'm doing energy clearing and all this other stuff that doesn't even have anything to do with nutrition response testing.
Right.
But that's just where we are now. It's this day and age. I feel like this whole movement that's happening on the face of the earth, boom, this is just part of it. I'm just
now, when you say movement, what movement do you mean?
Energetic movement, like spiritual movement, the ascension, we call it. It's just like, I didn't even know what that was 5 years ago. It just, things are moving at warp speed for me. And if they're moving at warp for me, they're moving at warp for my patients. Cause I'm like a conduit. Everything I learn, I pass it on right away. And that's just been how it's been going.
So prior to 7 years ago, you didn't really, your background or, your sensitivity or your practice, did you come from any sort of spiritual background, religious? Did you meditate? Did you have any of that kind of background at all?
No, not really.
No. Okay. That's really interesting. So,
well, what I did have was that innate ability to want to help people. And I also always had a connection with animals, which I look back now and realize that it was beyond the norm. But at that time, I didn't know it. I thought I just loved animals, you know?
Yep.
And I thought I just loved helping people. And then, of course, looking back, the universe took care of my path because I went in directions that I never would have expected. I wanted to be an airplane pilot in high school. That was my goal, to become a pilot.
Wow.
Yeah. I realized I didn't have the height requirement. I think at that time you had to be 5'6", and I was 5'5", so that went out the window about as fast as you could ever imagine.
Right.
And then I thought, well, I'm going to be a vet. But then the jockey thing came in, and that took 12 years. That took 12 years for me to complete that whole section.
Wow. 12 years. So, you rode for 12 years.
I didn't ride the entire time, but I was 12 years on the track since grade 12, and there are 13 grades. There were 13 grades in Canada at the time.
Okay, got it.
And so I started grade 12, and then did my time, and then I was still on the racetrack, but I had started going to community college, and I had promised my mother years ago that I would go back to school when that time came, because I had a very easy time in school. I got very high grades very easily. So it was pretty much a waste for me not to do higher education.
Right.
And I knew that it would inevitably happen at some point.
So I'm curious, because what I love is the fact, I grew up in Northern California and, the Bay Area, Oakland, Piedmont, Berkeley area. And so the surroundings. I mean, I went to high school in San Francisco, so my surroundings were very open, conducive to new age thinking.
Right. I did not have that.
Forward,
same.
Leading edge conversations before they were cool to have. Yeah. And I say that not as a brag. It's more like the fact that my experience with this has only gone on and grown and expanded. So it's interesting to me that have you come at it from left field to a certain degree, and all of a sudden you have this natural, and I would, I guess, assert that we all have an intuitive nature and, an ability
Absolutely.
to a sensitivity to others, and whether or not we actually practice it or listen to it is another thing. But it seems like you essentially put yourself into an environment that fostered it. And suddenly, like you said, it just kind of snuck up on you. And fortunately, you didn't push it aside. You didn't give in to, I wonder the conversation anymore with spirituality and healing and holistic health. And it's a little bit more welcome in public conversations these days.
Oh yeah.
So it's not something you go, oh man, whatever. But
some people,
of course. And I'm curious how do you get confronted by that in your day to day at all?
Absolutely.
What do people say?
Well, I'm affectionately known as the voodoo doctor in my office. I don't know if you've heard people say that one, or I have a group of people that just refer to me as the good witch. So, everyone's got their own thing, and we say it in jest, but the truth is some people are ready for this stuff and some people aren't. And even my own family, they're great now, but in the beginning, I know they wouldn't say it to my face, but they had to be thinking, oh my God, Claudy-Ann's lost it. She's gone off the deep end with this craziness. The proof is in the pudding is one of my favorite sayings. So when I take that arm of yours and all of a sudden you're a man of 190 pounds and you're full of muscle, and then you can't hold your arm up as I'm pushing on it, that says something.
Right.
And so if you're truly not going to believe it and you don't want to, then even with that proof, you're just going to dismiss it. And I have people like that, not so much lately, but in the beginning I had a lot of that because I wasn't as adept at explaining things. Now I have a logical explanation, and I've seemed to have grown wiser and know how to get people to believe that I know they're meant to believe. And yes, everyone has this ability in them. It's just a matter of waking up and realizing you have it. And that it goes for everyone. I truly believe that. And
I think, and then practicing it. I think
yes,
that just because we have it doesn't mean that it's naturally just kind of, I think it perhaps naturally flows out of people, but I think a large majority, I look at my children and my daughter has said to me sometimes where she will, she'll be at a location that she's never been at before. And she knows where she's at. Like she's familiar with where she's at. Right. And then she tells me, oh, I had a dream about this place last week. And that's happened a couple times. And my first inclination is to say, embrace that. Go with it. If listen to that. Don't push it aside, because it's something that is not taught or fostered in our current culture.
That's right. It's a big problem.
It's a missing. I think it's a real missing, because it's not only intuition for others, like me sensing something about my wife or others, but me sensing something about myself and listening to that. So the idea of being a practitioner like this, I guess, is there anything next? Have you written any books or?
I have not. I've been talking about writing a book for so long, it's not even funny. And so now there's just that much more to be able to write about.
Right.
But I figure when it's truly time for me to start writing things down,
you'll write.
I will write. Yes. Right. I'm a huge believer in that now, because when I look back at my life and I see the road to where I am now, you can't make that up. No. You cannot make this up. It's just the universe laying it out, and as resistant as I may have been at certain times, boom, here I am. It's not the finish by any stretch of the imagination, but wow, what a
you couldn't have predicted. You couldn't have predicted. I don't think you could have predicted it. You couldn't have said this is where I'm going. You said we were talking about the proof, and I know when we came to you through a friend, and then I saw my wife having the experience with you and feeling that she was having results, and so I decided to come and work with you as well. And my thinking was, I'm a pretty open person to this idea, no matter how unexplainable it is. I do enjoy the ability to have a conversation about something that is hard to explain and couple it with science. And I've been listening a lot to different doctors, neuroscientists lately who are doing that. And I like listening to that conversation of the commingling of the two, where the notion of spirituality or healing is met with facts.
Yeah, I think our culture requires this because we've been so bred to need the science as proof.
Yeah, if I don't see it, I don't believe it. Now that's not my belief.
Right.
However, I like it. I like it when I can see an image of synapses in the brain.
That's right.
Firing together because of some sort of thought being thought consistently, and that synapse fires together, and the same being true when that thought ceases to be focused on and that synapse disintegrating from being connected. That I like seeing that, because then I say, oh, okay, this thing that I feel is working. It's doing what I think it's doing, and I can see it. And I like, for some reason, that just kind of adds something to it. Now with what I do with you, I don't have that. What I have is, how do I feel in the morning? Do I feel different than when I started? Yes, I do. It's that kind of, it comes back to sensing it. It comes back to feeling it. How do I feel? If I feel an improvement, then something's working. Now, it could be any number of things, and you could be a component of that. But
that's right.
If I don't subscribe to it, I'm working against the grain.
That's right.
If I don't embrace what you're doing and say, all right, I might think she's a witch doctor or a nice witch, what have you? As far as I'm concerned, that's fantastic. If you're a nice witch, even better. But my feeling is, if it's working, and if I believe it's working, then the likelihood of it working expands.
Yes. And
it's like the whole placebo effect.
Yeah. I mean, there's proof out there that the placebo effect does indeed have an effect.
Right.
So that brings us to the whole psychological aspect of things, where I think as a people, meaning the entire earth, we have not really touched on the abilities of the brain. We just don't know. It's not in our science yet. We're going to see, though. We're going to see. The future is that quantum everything. Yep. People are going to start getting it. I mean, they already are here in California, but the rest of the world will catch up at some point. And so, to me, that is going to be the future. And everyone can say she's crazy. However, there are so many people that feel the same way I do now, that there's no way it's crazy. It's just becoming very, very common for people to talk about quantum physics, anything,
Yeah, for sure. I think neuroscience, neuroplasticity, I mean, just the simple fact that, 15, 20, 25 years ago, the notion of being able to change your brain science, the notion that, once you're past this certain age, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Your brain is set. And that was a belief, kind of like there was a belief that the earth was flat. These are all things that we believed as a species until we didn't, there was enough information that said, oh, okay, that doesn't really actually make sense anymore. So the notion that neuroplasticity is reality is, I think, was an opening, at least for me. It was. When I heard that, I was like, "What? Whoa, yes, okay, great. I can participate in this. I can engage in this idea of changing my mind, transforming my mind, altering what my mind is doing." I think that we only have really, I mean, control is such a crazy word, right? But I think that the idea that we can control our thoughts is true. I mean, we can't stop having thoughts, but we can stop thinking them. You know, if I'm having thoughts that feel like shit and I'm disempowered by them, I can stop thinking about those and replace them with thoughts that feel great. So I do have that control. And if I believe, and I think that there's a lot of facts to base to support this, is that it starts with a thought. All of it starts with a thought. And that thought creates a feeling, and that feeling tends to create an action or an inaction. And that's all affecting our physiology and releasing chemicals and then creating actions. And those actions become behaviors. And before you know it, you're that personality. That's who you are. That's your beliefs.
That's right. That's right. And it's just the ability of that said person to be able to grasp this concept and do it.
Right. Just run with it. And don't think you got to figure it out. I mean, the thing is, it's not about, I don't think, necessarily figuring it out. I think it's an ongoing learning, like you said. It's a learning experience. You're continually learning. You're continually realizing, the more I know, the less I know.
Yes. That's a really good way to describe it, because if you would ask me specifically what goes on in my body that allows me to tell what's wrong with you without even touching you or seeing a blood test or whatever, an MRI, I can't answer that for you. It's just, I can do it. And people ask me it all the time. And I'm just kind of like, well, I just know. And then that seems to be good for them. I just know, and they take that answer.
Well, right. And I think when it comes to like health and wellness and somebody else's, I mean, you could say to somebody, hey, well, I don't understand how she can say that she doesn't know. Well, great. Do you love your daughter? Can you prove that?
Exactly. Great example.
You can't, there's certain things they're intangible. And especially when it comes to things outside of our understanding. I mean, the idea of explaining things that are unexplainable. There's simply not words to define what we're talking about sometimes.
That's right. And the culture is just so much about prove it to me with something tangible.
That's right.
And that, of course, now people becoming more spiritual. And of course, that includes a lot of the intangible. So, it's a progression.
Yeah. We like label things. We like to label things. We like to quantify, qualify, categorize. That's what our brain loves to do. And
that's right.
We're super good at it. But I think sometimes that can get in the way. And I think if we can step outside of that and just observe and witness and allow, I think that's a big part of it for me, at least over the last few years, has been embracing the idea of gratitude, obviously, but acceptance and allowance, saying, embracing this, whatever that's leading me or guiding me in a feel good space. And I mean that to a certain degree, as simply as I say it. If it feels good, I pursue it. If it doesn't feel good, I don't. And I don't mean that to say, like, if I, want to do an eighth of cocaine, it might feel good for a little bit. I've had my experience of feeling good doing things I shouldn't do. But I mean, on a larger scale, long term, I think you and I know what I'm talking about. But
yes.
But I'm saying if it's an empowering experience, like me doing a bunch of cocaine, it's not an empowering experience. And I know that.
That's right.
But it may be a short-term little burst. But other than that, the idea of pursuing things because they feel empowering to me is what I am working on pursuing. And if they don't, I don't. Now, again, it doesn't come immediately. It doesn't come overnight.
No. And it comes faster to some, and it doesn't ever come to others. So, it's just, that's the beauty of humans on earth. We're all so different, and we all do things differently, different paces. and have different paths.
So I know we've touched on a couple of them, and I just want to make sure that we haven't brushed over any of them. So as far as your breakthrough or breakthroughs in your life are concerned, you mentioned one being the realization of your intuition, the realization of your sensitivity, kind of switching on to a certain degree.
Yeah, that was huge, but that was like after a zillion other breakthroughs, just getting to that point. Every path change in my life, because I wanted to be a veterinarian. And so I even got accepted at various universities for vet school, and then things happened and I just wasn't able to, mostly money at that time. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up at chiropractic college. I didn't even know what chiropractic was. I talked to somebody that was there, and I actually had the audacity to tell them, "You're kidding, right? You're gonna manipulate these bones and it's going to make me feel better." Like, that's how much I did not know about chiropractic.
Right.
But I did know it made me feel better. So anyway, that being said, that was just getting into chiro school was a huge thing, and getting the money to go to school. And, that all these things led me to where I am today. And looking back, I can say it was way beyond my control the way it went. But when you're in it, you don't realize that, right?
No,
you think you're making decisions, and you think you're forging ahead and
That's
all
right.
this other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I try to I remind myself, like you said, my I guess here's my labeling. This is what I do, right? This is what we do. Labeling is co-creating. It's not totally me, and it's not absent of me.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. Yeah.
And I heard somebody also say the universe has the rudder and you've got the oars.
Very good.
You're rowing. You're putting in the blood, sweat, and tears. You're taking the actions, but there's something else that's steering to a certain degree.
To a certain degree, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that again, there we go with maybe. I mean, there we go. Like, I guess, I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, that dance of control, not control, surrender, or trying to, take a hold of the wheel it's a dance.
It is. It is definitely a dance. And, that's how you change and that's how you grow. In the beginning, looking back in my earlier years, I had so many opportunities because, we do have free will in this universe. So the universe can put anything out there for you, but it's free will, your own decisions. And that's universal law that you are allowed to make whatever move you so choose.
Right.
And so it's your ability to recognize this little push from the universe and where they're telling you to go or making things easier. It's totally up to you whether you choose the easy way or, some of us, including myself, tended to take the hard road most of the time.
Right.
And that doesn't happen now, but this is part of the getting wiser with age type of thing. I used to always opt for the tough way to get somewhere. And,
what do you think? Do you think that's just because it's a really good point, though? There is something to be said about what we're taught that, to get ahead, you got to work hard.
That's right.
As opposed to the idea that, take the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. The path of least resistance sounds like a cop-out to some people. Well, you didn't work for it. Or,
that's right.
To have success in your life, you have to work tirelessly to get there, to suffer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's part of that spiritual growth, because even when you take those tough roads to get places and you believe it's because you have to work hard, or it could be as simple as the fact that you believe that you're just not lucky and everything comes in a tough way for you, and you believe that that's just the way it was supposed to be for you. And the reality was you've chosen that route for yourself.
And exactly. And I think that kind of just comes back to what I was saying earlier, which is that is just a thought that became a belief. You tell that somebody tells that to themselves over and over and over again since they were a little kid. Before you know it, they actually believe it's the truth.
That's right. It's like that saying. And I learned this from a woman whose videos I steer a lot of people to, Christy Marie Sheldon. She teaches you how to remove core beliefs out of your field and replace them with something that's more in line with your greater good. And one of those is that money is the root of all evil. Do you remember hearing that a lot? I mean, I feel like I heard it all the time. And I realized I kept telling myself that, and that it was a core belief. And until I stopped with that and got it out of my belief system and replaced it with that not being true, that's when things started happening in my professional life. I mean, that was another light bulb moment for me when I realized, wow, this has really been stopping me from achieving the things I need to achieve or want to achieve.
Yeah. Well, we get what we focus on.
That's right.
Whether we like it or not. And I think that's one of the tricky double-edged swords about that law, if you will, is people think, well, I'm not focusing on not having enough money. I want to be rich and I want to be able to do whatever I want. But if you ask them actually what they're thinking about every day or what they're worrying about every day and they're adding emotion to every day, it's likely why they don't have enough money.
Yeah, that's right.
And then,
that's right.
And that's what they have is not enough money. And it's because they're focusing on that. And then they add, I heard a great one. It said, basically thoughts when married with emotion become magnetized and they attract similar and like thoughts.
Yes. Yes.
So you get behind something emotionally and you're driving home and you're thinking about whether or not you're going to be able to pay your mortgage on time or your rent on time. And you realize, oh my God, I only have this amount of money and how am I going to get more money? I don't have enough time to do the money. And I never have enough money. And every single month I keep on doing the same. And before you know it, you're a madman or a mad woman. And and no one did that.
No, you
did it. You did it sitting on the 405, in bumper traffic. You worked yourself up into a frenzy and wonder why you're not paying your mortgage or your rent on time.
That's right. And I often use that kind of a negative sided example to flip that switch.
That's right.
And say, how about even if it's not true, how about you put that amount of emotion into some positive thinking?
That's right.
And then, the emotion is the difference maker between you thinking, oh, I did some great work today. And, good things are going to happen now versus, oh my God, that was amazing. It was so good. I want this to happen every day. Like that difference in emotional level will create that so much faster. And when people can realize that, and, I think I probably told you about this before, but I started listening to Abraham Hicks.
Love Abraham Hicks.
In the beginning of moving to California. And because I was really desperate to just, okay, I know my thinking is off, but I don't know how it's off.
Right.
So what can I do? So, they tell you to imagine you have $100 bill in your pocket as you're walking by the stores and you say, oh, I could buy that if I wanted. I'm just choosing not to, that kind of mentality.
Yep.
But so what I would do was I would sit in my car on my 1 hour, 3 mile LA ride home. And I would just scream out in joy at how good it felt to help the 25 patients I had that day. And oh my God, I just want this to become a reality, because not even become a reality. I just want this to be an everyday occurrence. I saw 25 people today and I helped them out and they're doing so well and life couldn't get any better than this. And then the reality was that I saw two people and my subconscious was thinking about how am I going to pay the rent this month, that kind of thing. Right. But I just stuck with it. I said, there's got to be something to this. And I just kept doing it every day. And then the universe took care of me. My sister and her husband came along and out of the blue supported me in buying this practice. And, one thing happened after the next. And within a year, I swear to you, I'm not exaggerating this, I was seeing 25 people a day.
Oh, yeah.
And now, you see my practice. It's boundless. It just, I can't handle anymore by myself.
And I'm a huge believer and practitioner of of what we're talking about. I mean, to flip the script free of condition, free of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, there was a time many years ago where I was in a similar situation, whether it was career or finances or, you know, health, wellness, whatever, that things weren't going the way I believe they should be going. Mm-hmm. But I, as you're saying, chose to flip the script. And that did require me, because the subconscious mind doesn't care.
That's right.
So whatever you say and whatever you're focusing on, that's what it's absorbing. That's what it's responding to. That's what it's creating in your background. And it does have this foundation. And the thing is also, it's also a negative. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So if you're in the car and you're freaking out about whether or not you can pay your mortgage or your rent on time, and oh my God, what if I don't? And how am I going to do this? And you're creating what might happen or what has happened because it's happened before. You're making it up. You're literally making it up, either from the past or what might happen out of fear. So yes. If we can agree that that's what's happening, mm-hmm. why wouldn't you just do what we're saying? Why not just put some new stuff, put some fun stuff, and say, I pay my bills on time or ahead of time. Mm-hmm. I always have more money than I ever need. And what is it like? What does it feel like to be financially free? How do you feel when you're financially free? How do you spend your day when you're financially free? You know, dance in that space for 5 minutes or so every day, you will get results.
That's right. That's right. And that's what I teach my patients this every time anything like that comes up, because for some reason people aren't aware. I'm not sure if we're just staying in the dark on purpose or what the deal is. But every time I mention like Abraham Hicks, for example, or just the idea of flipping the script like that, they act like they're hearing something for the very first time.
Right.
And when I realized that it was a lot of people hearing it for the first time, I said, okay, well, I need to include this in my daily. That's just, and I do. I talk about it constantly with people. Here I am, this practitioner who's really I'm a chiropractor first. And now I've gone to using herbs and vitamins to heal the body completely. And now I am, I was a bartender for many, many years. It's how I paid my way through school. It's how I kept my life on track up until, I was bartending as late as being 40, in my 40s at a resort in New York. Hmm. So that being said, I kind of lost my train of thought here. So hold on.
It's okay.
Before I went into the bartending thing, I was just like, oh, yes, the psychology thing.
Right.
So I've been, as a bartender, I was feeling like I was giving all this life advice to people.
Right.
With no credentials, of course. No credentials. Just kind of seem to have that bartender mentality.
That's right.
Always. And now I find that this is me in my practice today. Like, I don't know where it's all come from. It's almost like I'm channeling, because sometimes something will come out of my mouth to help someone with advice or whatever. And trust me, I'm not saying I'm a psychologist or anything of that nature. Nothing like that. But just life advice seems to flow through me, even when I don't really know why I'm saying it at the time or where that's coming from. And that's what I mean by I feel like a channel sometimes, because the words are just flowing. And I swear to you, I don't even plan it. It's like, how you think about what you're going to say a lot of times and then you say it, or at least you hope you think you plan what you're going to say a little bit as a doctor talking to your patients.
Sure.
And sometimes these things just flow, and I don't know where it's coming from. And, the point is it makes people feel better, and it does help them progress in their healing. And I guess that's the main thing about it.
I what I hear also, and I've experienced something similar to it as I have experience in my past as being a coach for people, personal, professional training and development, that space. And you can have all kinds of training. You can have all kinds of experience, but sometimes you just need to get out of the way.
Yes, exactly.
And in that getting out of the way and having the willingness to get out of the way, because what ends up happening is if I don't get out of the way, the reason I'm not getting out of the way is because my ego wants to stay there, wants to know it, and wants to be right and wants to look good. But sometimes I remember when I would talk to different people who I was coaching, and that concern would come up of, oh my God, what am I going to say to them? How am I going to help them? How am I going to support them? I don't know what I'm going to say to them. What do I know? I'm a fraud. They're going to find out I'm a fraud. I mean, like all that would be kind of dancing in my mind. And as soon as I was willing to risk looking bad, not knowing the answer, and just letting whatever was going to come through, oftentimes I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, I'm like,
that's me every day.
Not bad.
Every day. Yep. Exactly. When I used to hide my intuitive nature. I used to hide it because I knew people had a hard time believing it. And now with, my level of success with this practice and my level of healing, well, I don't care anymore. I just put it out there. I find in curses from your past lives, I tell you, you can think I'm nuts. I don't really care, and that's the point where I'm at that level now. And that is so far removed from what I was 10 years ago. You don't even know, it just, things have just changed and evolved so much. For the better, I'd like to think, for the better.
Well, it's interesting you say that because you bring up the curses conversation because what there's a holistic experience in the body, right? The actual physiology, the psychology, the emotionality, all of it. But again, kind of stepping outside of what many people would have a conversation and go, this is crackpot town, but is getting into the idea of healing energy, the idea of healing past lives, all of that is such an outside the box conversation for many people because, at the beginning there's, chiropractor, I adjust things, your body is adjusted, chemicals are popped or released or whatever it is, and you feel an alignment in your physical body. Okay, I can explain that. I can show it. Blah. Great. Or, okay, you know what? Your liver is doing a little bit of something, so we're going to give you this natural remedy, a whole food supplement, and you're going to take that. It's in a bottle. You put the pill in your mouth. Boom. Right? Now you get into the whole other space of what we're talking about, which is, but maybe that's not, maybe there's something more. Maybe there's something more that we haven't addressed. And that opens the conversation to what I'm asking about, which is energy healing and how that conversation of quote unquote curses shows up or past life healing shows up. And how do you navigate that? Does it just show up? Does the patient say, hey, by the way, I mean, how does that all work?
I guess in the beginning, it was all about me being brave enough to mention it with the risk that the person was going to jump off the table and run out of the room. Right? Yeah. But I usually, my staff and I, and my friends and I fool around with this stuff a lot with them before I take it to the office.
Right.
And so taking the muscle testing a step further, we haven't really talked about it that much, but what you do is you use the muscle testing to not only check the condition of the organs in the body or the physiological stuff, but you can actually just ask the universe, and to be more specific, you're asking your higher self questions, and you get answers through the response of the muscle testing. And so that's, I take it for granted now. That's why I didn't really mention it before, but I realize most people don't know. So what I start doing with people is I'll give them an example and I'll say, okay, universe, are there past lives that need to be dealt with? And then they'll feel their arm either strong or weak. See, me intuitively, I already know the answer, but I have to keep the patients in step with me, so I have to show what I'm doing. And I do that with the muscle testing. And so as long as I ask questions out loud, because a lot of things I do in my mind, like 5 million things at a time, if you don't already know that, the things that I show my patients or want to teach them about is what I ask out loud, and I see them and I'll demonstrate a no answer or a yes answer. And that's kind of how I get them used to that aspect of the muscle testing. And then later, I'll use that again to say, listen, you know what? Intuitively, I'm feeling like there are some things from your past and that's beyond your control, but I'd like to clear them. Are you okay with that? And you want to try it? And then 9.5 times out of 10, they go, yes. And as soon as I bring up past lives, the first words out of their mouth usually is, I knew this was going on. See, people seem to be just afraid to talk about that stuff.
Right. But on some level, they already got it.
That's right. That's right. When I say you have curses, they're like, I knew it. Oh my God, who put that on me? They need permission. They need permission. That's right. And that's when I talk about woo-woo stuff, about the secret space program, about all chemtrails, all that stuff that most of us have heard about or know about. As soon as I mention it, boom, it's like you said, they now have permission. And oh my goodness, the stories that come out. Oh, I really do have interesting conversations in my office. And,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean,
yes.
that's a whole other episode.
It is. That's another hour. Yes.
Yeah. No, because I mean, it's true. There's so much to be, and I'm saying, I hesitate to use the word conspiracy because then it becomes like, oh, well, then it's not really true. But because some of you automatically, I think when people hear conspiracy theory, they hear crackpot. At least
that's right. That's right.
However, there is something to be said about what is actually really happening and what's not really happening. Yep. And I think that us understanding, for example, on its most simple base level, that the foods, for example, that we're eating that we're thinking are healthy simply aren't as healthy as they used to be by definition is no conspiracy. It's just
the proof is in the pudding.
Proof.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at America. Look at your average American and what they eat.
Exactly. And even for someone like me who consciously eats vegetables and fruits, my concern is that those vegetables and fruits are not as nutritious as they once were.
Right. And there are scientific things you can do to prove that. And they have already. If they take the iron content of a tomato from 50 years ago, it's, I don't know, I forget the numbers exactly, 400, 500 milligrams, whatever they measure that in.
Right.
And now it's like 1. Yeah. So come on. It's like, if we haven't realized the GMO movement, genetically modified stuff and pesticides and how they're rooted in everything. And if you pour color dye on earth surrounding a head of lettuce, and then you see that lettuce come up with that color in it, even though you poured the dye feet away from that thing. So, it doesn't take too much imagination to realize that everything that's dumping on our earth is in our food, and we are just ingesting that. It's to me, it's a no-brainer, but a lot of people are unaware.
What do you recommend for people as far as eating properly, considering these circumstances? There's a lot, because of what to eat healthier, meaning organic, it just kind of like, for example, or gluten-free, or, certain elements that we are kind of aware of on a layman's term without because, eating organic, it's not cheap.
No, it's not. And the biggest downer about that whole organic thing is that I forget what the exact numbers are, but it's something like in America, in order to qualify as organic, I think the number is about 60% that you have to, through testing, it has to be 60% organic. Mm-hmm. But that means almost half that product doesn't have to be.
Right.
So, and that's our organic. So imagine how the non-organic foods are. It's right. It's just mind-boggling that we have come to this level of food quality.
Well, and how we're communicated with, how it's branded, in the sense of saying, like a bottle of juice says 100% real cranberry juice, when in fact the actual required amount of actual juice in that bottle is 5% actual cranberry. They are able to say, because we put 5% of the cranberries in that juice, we can call it 100%.
Right. And it's just ludicrous. I just came from Europe I'm very sensitive to everything. I can tell when I'm eating something that's good for me. I can tell when I'm not. And the food is just different.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just different. And aside from the
different.
fact
It tastes different.
yeah.
I feel better
It
eating
tastes different.
the fruits
You feel
and vegetables.
better. Right. You don't have the same reactions. I can send my people that can't have any grain here, like not even one slice of bread. I can send them overseas and tell them very confidently, go ahead and eat the pasta or eat the bread because you're not going to have a reaction.
Right.
And it's true. I don't think I've had one person come back to me and say, oh, I couldn't eat anything over there. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that, because what I recall many times when in France, for example, I remember, sitting down and having fruit in the morning. And there were moments where I would eat the fruit and literally sigh with relief.
Yeah. It's true.
There was literally, I was taken over by how good it felt and tasted. And I had to actually express it out loud.
Yeah. I can only speak about Holland because I know Holland much more thoroughly than I know the other countries and what they do in their practices. And even though I'm not up on the latest Dutch practices either, but I do see an inherent difference in that it's small time farming. Granted, and I may be biased, but they are really good at growing things. Flowers, of course, but just food in general. And if you drive through the countryside and you see the animals, they're all grazing, they're all fat and look healthy as all get out. And, it's just completely different.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for that old school mentality where they're still shoveling poop and the machines aren't doing everything and people are working their butts off on the farms. I don't know. That seems to be gone here in America. And I just wish it would come back. It's sad. It's very sad for me.
So as far as recommending, I guess I'm not sure if it's too difficult to recommend on a broad scale as opposed to an individual, but can you recommend or suggest how folks listening could eat healthier than they are if they're interested?
Yeah, I can give my general terms that I tell most people in the beginning, because I have discovered one thing. If you put people on a strict diet, it's not going to work. It never does. The odd person can stick to it, but it's a rarity. So I try to stay very general, and everyone knows, the high fructose corn syrup is bad for you. Most people are aware that sugar, candy, cookies, all that stuff, that should not be in the diet. I just usually skip over that because everybody rolls their eyes and they know already, But as for just generalities, I say try to not eat as much meat as you would if you're a daily meat eater. I would try to curb that back just because of the quality of the meat we're getting nowadays. Now, if you want to spend money, there is better meat to be gotten.
I found recently, and I don't know if you know about this or not or agree, but like, for example, New Zealand grass-fed beef.
That's right.
Compared to something you would get here. And it's a palpable difference. And it's not like I'm eating a filet mignon. I've had them, and you can get them frozen. They freeze them on their way, however they get here. Yep. And I've had them, and you can get them at Trader Joe's. And it's a distinct difference. Now, I don't eat meat. I don't eat red meat on a regular basis, but I will make that conscious choice to say, okay, if I'm going to have a steak, I'm going to go that route. And it happens to be because it's from another country. Yeah.
I mean, that's, if you think about what New Zealand looks like and how untouched it is versus other areas, then it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, that you could get good beef from there. And I actually I'm looking for the name as we speak. I started ordering meat. I don't eat a lot of meat any longer, but I still feel better when I have some in my diet.
Right.
And there's a company out there that's taking that kind of beef, really good chicken, turkey, bacon, very good. They ship it to you in dry ice, And I did my first delivery this last month, and wow, what a difference. Because I was really getting turned off. That I couldn't even get myself to eat any of the stuff, knowing that my body kind of needed it, And so I was, it was a real struggle. I am still going through to not eat animal products or to eat animal products, because talking about the energy thing, these animals that are being cruelly killed, and then the energy and the fear that's in that body. And, that's another hour's worth of talking.
Right.
So with that knowledge, I have a hard time. So anyway, I got this company, they're shipping, and so far it's been a major success. It's called Box I forget, Box something. Anyway, the company's really good so far. And the difference when you eat that meat versus the way I feel after regular stuff that we get, in the grocery store, it's I can't even put it in words, the difference, and I guess people just have to get out there and try and experiment and eat as clean as possible. By clean, meaning if you think something's bad, it's bad for you. That's it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, it is unfortunate that in this day and age we have to actually order online and get food that is better for us than being able to walk down the street or go to a farmer's market, which is what we should be doing, instead of, bitching and moaning about how the fact that we can't get food healthy. But either way around it, it takes willpower. It takes a willingness to be healthy. And we're also in such a society of wanting a quick fix that, if just give me a pill so I can sleep. Just give me a pill so I can feel joy. Just, and that it's lazy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And I say
society.
that, yeah. And I say that because, I'm part of this society. I'm just saying it's something that I've experienced, and I look at it and I say it's promoted. We're victims to a certain degree. We are bombarded by this information, and it's tough to get around it. It takes something to get around it.
That's right. We haven't even touched on the whole pharmaceutical thing. I mean,
right.
There's another hour, Jordan. The pharmaceutical world. It's like they run the country, but that is what it is right now, but you're right. We won't go there right now.
Right. But I think at the end of the day, I think what we're saying is to be healthy does require mindfulness. It does require additional action. It does require finding resources that are not necessarily convenient. And what I found with something being quote unquote convenient is that initially there may be a little bit of a switching of habit. There might be, because it's different. I have to go. I have to get up at Sunday and go to this farmer's market, or I have to go online and join this online meat company and you set it up and da. But once it's set up and once it becomes a habit, it's no longer necessarily inconvenient.
That's right. You might even enjoy getting up and going out into nature and shopping a little bit for some good stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're taking yourself into consideration. There's something that feels good about doing that. And that releases serotonin and dopamine into your brain, and you feel good. And so it's that kind of experience. I'm trying to find, because I remember you said about the meat place, because I was recommended a place also. I have not tried it yet, and I'm wondering if it's even the same one.
Let me see here. I'm on the right.
Yeah, I can't find it. But what we're saying is there are a number of companies out there now that will send you higher quality meats. And I mean, like you said, chicken, turkey, beef, buffalo. I mean, there's all kinds of different choices, but the grade of that meat is higher, obviously, if you're a meat eater and can't stop being a meat eater.
That's right. You just have to kind of look into the write-ups for the companies. And somebody like me, of course, I know right away because this is what I do. But even as a lay person, you start reading, and if they're talking about how they treat the animals prior to killing them for food, and those are the companies that it's called Butcher Box. I just found it.
Fantastic. Butcher
so those are
box.
the ethical companies. Yeah, look for the ethical factor. I feel like our own standards kind of guide us for everything if you look at the ethics and morals of what you're doing. And that goes with everything. And so that includes the food you're putting in your mouth, how ethical and what the moral standards are of the people preparing that food. You know what I mean?
Of course.
So if everyone just starts putting that into the equation, boy, we're just going to be a great society in no time.
And I think
we truly already are. Yeah.
Getting a great recommendation is also a big part of it. Listening to someone like you who's obviously tried it, had that experience of it, that recommendation is great. And then to trust your intuition, do your homework. Again, these are certain elements of things that are going to require additional time, but that's okay.
That's right.
How would you define a breakthrough?
A breakthrough to me is when you suddenly realize what you thought a minute ago no longer holds true, and that your new quote unquote reality really was there all along. You just didn't recognize it.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
Does that make sense?
Completely. I think that I hear that there's a paradigm shift.
Yeah,
literally
paradigm shift for certain.
And my experience of a breakthrough is it tends to be transformative. Like, it's not that I am fixed. It's that I am not the same person I was that I am now prior to and after that breakdown and breakthrough.
That's right.
So, and what I also love, you also added to that, is that there's a revealing of the fact that whatever you became present to in the breakthrough was always there. You just couldn't see it.
That's right.
And that is such a great clue to me, or to anybody, is to be aware that there's so much out there that you don't know. Just be patient and do the work, because in those dark shadows of our conscious and subconscious mind are all the answers we need.
That's right. They are all there, and it's how you decide to let them come through to you, and how easily or with how much resistance you decide to let them come through is how you will develop and become that person you are slated to become, basically. Yeah.
Completely. So, well, again, obviously we could do multiple episodes, and maybe we'll have to do another one. There's so many topics. There are. I really do appreciate your taking time, because I know this is one of your days off, and I know you work hard healing people. So
it's hard work.
I do appreciate you taking some time out of your free day to have this conversation.
Very welcome, Jordan. Very welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you so much. And everybody else, see you next time on another episode of Breakthroughs with Jordan Murphy. Today's episode is sponsored by Audible.com and Amazon Fresh. Check out those promotional giveaways on the front page of my website. Stay tuned for more episodes of Breakthroughs with Jordan Murphy. Check out my website at breakthroughswithjordanmurphy.com. Stay connected on Instagram at Breakthroughs with Jordan and Twitter at Jordan D. Murphy. And if you have a great story to share, as I'm sure many of you do, go to my website at breakthroughswithjordanmurphy.com and shoot me an abbreviated version of your story to my email. I'll give it a read and maybe share a couple of them on the show.